Welcome to this special edition of On Point. And today I have Lok Sabha member from Manipur, Mr. Bimol Akoijam. And the conversation topic stems from the protests that have taken place in Manipur on the issue of NRC and Census. We'll be talking about other things as well. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on Point. Let me begin by asking you, how come this issue of NRC before Census has become so big in Manipur?
Because this has been there for a long, long time. It's not suddenly propped up recent times. The concern for illegal immigrants and foreigners, it is almost coexisted in Manipur since the Assam agitations. So you can remember that there have been a series of agreements signed by the All Manipur Student Union and the government since 1980s and the 90s. So this is nothing new. The NRC was already there in their agreement that it could be one of the bases for distinguishing foreigners and illegal immigrants. So this is nothing new. What has aggravated the situation is, over the years after that, you have 1980s problem in Myanmar, and 1921, again, you have another issues. Then you have this crisis of influx of refugees from the neighboring countries, which Mizoram also had the same issues, Manipur also has the same issues. So I think that has aggravated. And also the subtle difference in which the Mizoram have responded to these refugees. In so far as they accept that these are refugees and we have to provide hospitality, despite the fact that India doesn't have a refugee policies. Because we are similar kinship structures and so on. But in Manipur, it moved a little beyond that. There is suspected, and there are indications of that, of a tendency to absorb these refugees among the local populations. I'll give you two examples on this. One was reported in the Ware in 2016 in the height of the problem. Then, the report quoted people accepting that there are Burmese in Churachandpur, and why shouldn't they be there? Because they are of a similar kinship structures and we don't recognize this international boundary. That kind of a statement was reported in the Ware in 2016 itself, in the height of that agitation then. And in the recent times in 2000, I think around 23, government was trying to map biometrics on these refugees, and they were asked to go to the designated camps. So they refused. They started settling amongst the local populations. So that fear has aggravated the situation. So the issue has been a long-standing one. It has come to the forefront now.
So the Congress party had, organized a lot of campaigns when SIR exercise had taken place. It primarily stemmed from the fact that, this will lead to delegitimization of a lot of people. It became an issue in Bihar, it became an issue in West Bengal. From that perspective, do you think that the issue of Manipur is different from the issues that your party has raised in various other states?
No, I think there's two different contexts. The principal ground on which the SIR was conducted was against their own manuals, which experts like Yogendra Yadav has pointed it out. I know they have hidden the manual, now they have discovered the manual, and the principle was to incorporate. And how to incorporate people in the voter list, but the principle guided by this SIR is how to exclude. That's a kind of a principle. But in terms of the citizenship, it is operated in a very different level, whether the erstwhile Foreigners Act or the present Immigration and Foreigners Act of 2025, the principal ground is different. So I think the two are not comparable. What I'm saying is that SIR, the principles and the modus operandi is completely against the established norms and institutional mechanisms. Whereas when we talk about NRC or the delineate foreigners or illegal immigrants, we are going by the existing laws of the land. It is not against that, either in terms of principles or in terms of the process.
So
these are two things are not one and the same.
Do you think NRC is possible in Manipur?
Yeah, I think it is possible. That what is required is the will of the state. You must remember that NRC is a legally mandated process. In 2003, the Parliament has amended the Citizenship Act 1955 and inserted that we should have a national register of Indian citizens. And we should, based on that, we should also issue the national identity cards. That was inserted in 2003 in Citizenship Act 1955. And remember that was unanimously passed. The bill was moved by the then Home Minister Advani on the floor of the House, and the Congress supported, so does the rest of the party. So that is a principle embedded in the legal structure of India to do NRIC. You see? And within that legal mandate, then we are only asking for a specific historical contingencies that you need to take into account. So Assam is one case. It has its own historical baggage. So does Manipur, and we have a long-standing issues with both Bangladesh as well as Myanmar. And especially with reference to Myanmar, you know there's unsettling effects that country had it since the 60s, then 80s, and again in 2021. So the influx of refugees from that part, and unlike, as I said, in Mizoram, in Manipur, we suspect that there is a tendency to absorb them in local and get the benefit of the state, scheduled tribe benefits and so on. So that has been a concern, and there are issues in the census data in terms of the expansion of villages, unauthorized villages. This is government's record, 900 plus unauthorized villages, enormous increase, which may not necessarily be explained by the cultural practices, for example, among the Kukis. It is far more than that one, as you can sense that one. And the change in the composition of the state assembly within the scheduled tribe communities. The Nagas, for example, used to have 12, 13 members. Now it's just drastically reduced one by one. So there are issues. The population growth in Kangpokpi and More, there are concerns around this one, for instance. But these are not the only one. In other Naga areas also, there are unnatural growth which can be explained by demographic logics, which has been recorded.
Paulinlal Haukip, he has tweeted that the entire spike is taking place in Naga-dominated area.
No, it is also in Kuki areas also. He is conveniently forgetting, not mentioning those areas. But there are also in the Nagas. That's why I said the scheduled tribe populations. It happens, and I think he's selectively picking up. It is there in Churachandpur areas, in areas as well. In that.
Do you think that the open border policy of last 20 years before, free regime movement of people was shut, has failed northeastern states?
No, I think, that this is very unfortunate. One is the affirmative policies of the Indian state has been exploited by, I suspect, by vested interests, by absorbing illegal immigrants. That is one huge suspicion that we have. And an indication I've told you that, instead of...
Who are these vested interests, sir?
Political elites. You create a vote banks through this. You see, that is what has been done in Manipur. And not only these affirmative policies have been exploited, but also the humane ethos of the Indian state, that this modern nation state is relatively new in South Asia. And we have to be sensitive to those people who reside in the border areas, free movement and so on has been exploited by inimical forces to the countries, be that in the Western sector or in the Eastern sector. Unfortunately, people give attention to the Western sector, not so much in the Eastern sectors. That's why Manipur suffer.
How do you frame the position taken by the Mizoram government? Every state or every area within a country will have a majority ethnicity or a minority ethnicity. But if states take constitutional positions from the point of view of governance, from ethnic point of view, just because, kinship is common, What sort of a precedent is that setting?
That is very unfortunate. This is, I've just said, one is that affirmative policies of the Indian state, the human ethos of the Indian state gets exploited by these inimical forces. And the third logic, which I have been saying from the day one, is that in this country, you cannot afford, call it communal, call it ethnic-based political arrangement. South Asia suffered because of that. That's why we call it communal politics. Many scholars have laid out this very properly since 1920s onwards. This communal politics resulted in partitions of the subcontinent and the bloodied experience we had it. And so thus when the state reorganizations were doing it, they were very cautious. Even when the so-called linguistic state formation was articulated in that report, if you look it carefully, it says that do not read this report as a one language, one state. Do not reduce this, because India cannot afford to have an administrative arrangement based on ethnicity or culture. We had enough of that one. But unfortunately, in certain sections of our society and political class, they position this ethnicity and communal parameters as the basis for administrative arrangement, and I think what you are saying is a reflection of that tendency. And I think that is why I have been saying that you should distinguish between ethnicity and citizenship. Unfortunately, as long as you have nation state, you have to believe in citizenship.
But isn't that ironical that NRC has become so politicized, at least in the mainland? Northeast has such a big problem in terms of immigration, and it's a sociological fact sometimes when ethnicities in milieu become very dominating, they aspire to be nationalities, and it leads to de-hierarchization of power structure. So the ethnicity which becomes small in numbers, its power footprint gets reduced in governance, apparatus of control, economy, political economy, if I may sum up like that. So isn't that ironical that NRC in itself has become a sort of a political, mudslinging match?
Yeah, I think this requires a very not a very superficial answer. I think I must get these things clear. I think you are touching on a very important issue in this country. We started on a liberal projects. All citizens are equal. We're not going to be Pakistan. We are different from that one. So you can see Nehru's position, Sardar Patel's position, any founding father's position is that we are not going to discriminate people on the basis of caste, creed, and so on. Hence, you have Article 15 in the Constitution. Remember that was the state project. And the idea is that have we been able to do that, India? And there are scholars and observers who pointed out that we have not actually achieved that one. We are a very successful democracy in terms of procedural aspects, that we have transfer of power from one government to another party, another government, peacefully. So India is a successful democracy in terms of its procedures. But in terms of substantive issues of equality among genders, equality among castes, among religions, among regions, we have not achieved that one. That is a known fact. So in that sense, what happened is NRC questions, which is actually founded on liberal principles of the nation state, that you need to distinguish between citizens and non-citizens, have been exploited, but particularly by the brand of politics that BJP is doing. And they are harping on NRC as a tool to attack a particular community, religious minority. I remember that even the CAA, when they brought in this another amendment in 2019, initially many of the other religious groups were not included. It is because people, protested. That's why they incorporated Christians, the Jains, and others later on. But they still left out Muslims from that category. So ethnicization of the concept of citizenship is what the BJP government doing and the CAA. But NRC is not founded on that ethnicization. It is simply citizens and non-citizens. But what the BJP is doing in the name of, they use terms like Guzbeti, and so obviously they are politicizing and ethnicizing citizenship. So NRC, if you decouple with CAA, what they have done in 2019, NRC in itself is founded on citizen and non-citizen. It's not ethnicization. But what the BJP is doing that, here you must also recognize why I'm saying that they are politicizing it. In actual terms, substantive terms, the number of illegal immigrants which have been deported after legally we define illegal immigrants, it was only in 2003. Before that, there was no legal definition of who is an illegal immigrants. So post 2003 illegal immigrants definition came into being in our statute. More than 82,000 illegal immigrants were deported during UPA 1 and UPA 2. 82,000 from 2004 to 2014. But these people who are talking about these Ghuspethi, illegal immigrants, what did they actually do? Since 2014 to 2024, the number of illegal immigrants which have been deported back to their countries is less than 5,000. So in terms of substantive work, BJP don't do it. They just have these rhetorics and discourses around ethnicizing NRC by bringing in another amendment in 2019. You see, that's why Congress was objecting to it. But Congress supported NRC because it's founded on liberal principle of citizen and non-citizen. So BJP is harping on polarizing the society and
that's a very interesting word, ethnicization of
NRC. That's what they're doing. Citizenship has been ethnicized by BJP. But NRC per se, till 2000 amendment, it is founded on citizenship and non-citizenship. But what they try to ethnicize is by bringing in this amendment in 2019, by excluding Muslims. I mean, and then, this blood and the soil sort of argument that I have said this and written about it before also. What the Nazis have done in the 20s and 1930s, blood and soil. You can see Prime Minister saying color of the passport and color of blood. That kind of a vocabulary was injected since 2014 onwards. And that's the danger. That's why Congress is skeptical about the NRC policy now because of the CA. But if you decouple it, historically also presently, I think the Congress supported NRC in 2003 amendment precisely because it's a liberally founded principle.
Okay. Let me bring you back to Manipur. Did you ever imagine that a conflict that was between two communities will in a couple of years involve the third? Now, even the Nagas are involved. Why did this happen? I met you for the first time 3 years ago in a conference, and I heard you speak, and I truly believe that it's sort of a two-way street. And in 3.5 years now, there's a third party involved, and the scale of violence have become very high, intense, personal, abductions, killing of children, which I thought would never happen in a regular rhythm. So you have some sort of non-violent days interrupted by very violent activities, which includes burning down of homes as well.
Kartikeya, if you have heard some of my statements from the day one, I have said that this is partition. In fact, I have compared the 3rd of May 2023 with 16th of August 1946, the direct action day of Muslim League. I have said this, not many registered, in Manipur, at least I don't see, in particular in my community, I think nobody talks about it. Why is that Bimol is saying that 3rd of May 3rd of May 2023 is like 16th of August 1946. This is a separate demand or homeland based on an ethnic group called Muslims. Separate homeland for Muslims, and the Muslim League announced that there will be a direct action day. So the action gets unfolded, and I could immediately sense there's something wrong with us. It's no longer a normal communal violence. The first thing is that I've never seen any of the particular, that's why I said do not blame the Kuki as a community. Blame their elites and their politics. I've never heard any one of them saying, well, peace must return, people calm down, don't do it. None of this statement came out from their elites. Immediately they started, there is no Kuki in the valley, there is no Meiteis in the hills. That is the argument. And they started positioning within 1 week the separate administration. So that is why I said 3rd of May 2023 is like the 16th of August 1946. Remember? That led to 3 days of mayhem in Calcutta and around. More than 10,000 people died. That was the beginning of the partition violence. And I said, I compared it in my first national interview. In May 2021, I started saying the same things. Nobody given hit to that one. So there is a politics behind this violence. 2, I said, but what about the state? Why didn't they crack down on this violence? Why didn't they stop it? Why that violence should happen in Imphal? That's the capital city. You get what I'm saying? The violence started in Churachandpur and adjoining areas. By evening, it will spill over to Imphal areas. But again, some of the propagandists from this Kuki politics said that it started in Imphal, which is a factually incorrect one. I have seen on the AK-47 holding people in Torbung areas been propagated in social media as Meiteis disrupting peaceful rallies in Sharma. That kind of a force would have been propagated. That's one part of the story. But my question is, then I started asking, when it spilled over to Imphal, this is the capital city, most sensitive part, you should be using the state forces. By state forces, I mean the security forces.
Yes.
Crack down. How can you allow this mayhem to go on? So I was talking to the same journalist the other day. I said, in your interview, 3 or 4 months after the violence started, when I said, why it did not stop, why it was allowed to go on for so long. When I said so long, it was 4 months. And now this is 3 years plus. So that's the second question I asked. Why the state did not do it? Indian state pumped in more than 30,000 security forces. The Indian state, the central government, with or without the request of the requisition of the state government. That's also a constitutional issue, which I reflect on even during that period. Because there is nothing 355 or 257A doesn't.
I remember.
All those arguments, nobody talks about this. Was a requisition came from the state government, who appointed the change of guard of the state administration. It was dictated by the central government, which is against the constitutional order. So I told one of the, just give me one moment, in a few seconds, I'll just explain this. That's why I said Indian state. Because if wanted to have a constitutional order, they would have done the necessary things of controlling the crowd. They didn't do that one. So that's why I said Indian state is complicit. And that's the side. The last one you were asking is, it is through this I realized that much of these armed groups, where within court, the national media was harping on Meitei militia group, this and that, they conveniently forget. There are armed groups among the Kukis who have umbilical connections with the political class. You see, who's ruling and sitting in assembly has their counterparts in these armed groups. We have forgotten it. And this is the same groups which was now accused by none other than the deputy CM of the present government, saying that so-and-so, what is that, KNFP, which is the other deputy CM's husband, is the head, who is implicated in this killing of Naga. Am I making sense now?
No, I understand that, but how did Nagas come in?
That is what I am saying. That the Indian state has allowed this to go on. These groups, which have been accused by none other than the deputy CM of the present government, accusing another deputy CM husband's group, is involved in this. And no action has been taken. So you are expanding the sphere of conflicts. In the process, the normal, ordinary citizens, be that Kukis or Nagas or Meiteis or Pangals, are suffering. You understand this? That is why this is expanded. You must know, in ethnic conflict, anybody who has done work on that will know the longer it takes, the sphere of the conflict gets not only entrenched, but also expanded. And that's why this is happening now. You have allowed it for too long.
So you're basically saying that the violence creates its own political economy?
Obviously. I mean, in literature, I like this thing. They said revolution was kicked up by a particular factor, but the revolution itself creates its own rationale. I mean, and that is why the same reasoning is, the more you allow a communal is a South Asian term, but international is often used as ethnic conflict, to go on, it leads either a vertical deepening, entrenched, and also expands it, and it becomes difficult.
Tell me, how is it possible with so many troops that communities can enforce their blockage? They can block national highways at will. How is it possible? I sometimes fail to fathom it. 30,000 security men there, 25,000. It's a small state, and still it gets enforced.
It's one of the problems. Why I keep on going to the Indian state is precisely this. Under all the institutional mechanism, ask these questions. This would not have happened. I think with you also, I often remember your face when I say Kartikeya had this problem or issue happen in UP or Bihar, would it have allowed? You said like this. I still have the video clip. You are not the only journalist I've asked this. So the Indian state, here again what you're saying, is this the Indian state? National highways. You know what is that, if the truth be spoken? The counter-insurgency paradigm is implicated in the present crisis. Remember that it's not only cookie armed groups. The manner in which you have this so-called ceasefire and sue, the paradigm itself is wrong. I mean, there is a Manipuri chap who served in police as well as in UN. He has a lovely lecture. He says, this demobilizations, de-weaponizations, disarming is part of any of these kind of negotiation. In India, we don't do that. In Manipur, what they do is that they prop up and sustain this, arm them, sustain them. They can recruit against all your agreement. And these groups have been allowed to operate within the civil spaces and political spaces. And then political class, that's why I said elites, right on.
Is this the reason why NGOs are so powerful and potent?
Leave the NGOs. NGOs, I think we have to be a little nuanced on that. Let me finish this before I miss this one. This is the fact. The counter-insurgency ethos and paradigm used by the Indian state is not according to the international norms when you have this kind of a negotiation. In the international process, established process, you have demobilizations, disarming. No, you don't do that here. You allow them. And this extortion on the highway, this economy, is created by that paradigm. That's why you talk to any driver from UP or Bihar who go to Manipur, they will say, Indian Army's post, Manipur State Police post, paramilitary post, and you have this insurgents group taking their pound of their, flesh. You call it tax, which is actually extortion. That has normalized. Uska effect kya hai? What is its effect? The cement bag which you get it for 350 rupees in Dimapur or in Guwahati, it is sold for 600, 700 rupees. Manipur became one of the highest inflation rate state in the country. And this has been going on for decades. And it is same armed groups were implicated in ethnic crisis each time. Since the 1990s, people have been saying this time also. And in Manipur, my suspicion is that that paradigm which operate in the hill areas were sought to be introduced in the valley areas, similar kind of paradigms, the political economy and practices. So it is rooted in the Indian state counter-insurgencies policies. Don't forget this.
In your opinion,
if I may allow me to say one more line. If it is this paradigm in which our armed forces are also being caught up, otherwise, I can tell you, however sophisticated weapon, 20, 50 people member or 100 member group, you have special forces, para forces. Do you think Indian Army can't handle them? In fact, the Indian Army and troops, organization like Assam Rifle knows these groups like they know the back of their hands. Who's the wife and wife's sister, where do they eat, where they drink. Indian armies and intelligence know this very well. If they wanted to crack down on it, stop the violence, they can do it, but they don't do it for two reasons. First is the political class do not take a decisive decision on these issues. Two, because of the ethos of the counterinsurgencies, many of these our security establishment are caught in that matrix.
Is ASU Accords the solution or the problem?
Which one?
The Sioux Pact.
See, for me, personally speaking, that's why I said, any grievances and aspirations, instead of picking at arms, you come to the negotiation table and to have a dialogue is a preferred mechanism in any democracy. So I'm not against ceasefire or suspension operation in principle. But as I have already pointed out, the manner in which these things have been done in Manipur, okay, is to naturalize and normalize what is essentially an abnormal practice. Okay, allowing them to operate, and then political class to have, to ride piggyback on these groups, to take out their political benefits. That's how it's been happening in Manipur. And this group also sustained, they have, this taxation within, they call it, extortions. So that political economy and ethos is part of the counterinsurgencies. If the government of India changed, no, ceasefire would mean these are the conditions, these are the classic example is this one. You have a deputy CM swear by the Indian constitution, accusing his own colleague, another deputy CM, whose husband's group is involved in the violence. It is there on press conference. Is it normal?
How's this government functioning?
No. Answer this. Is it normal that a deputy CM is accusing the other deputy CM's group is implicated in this?
Very
violence?
problematic.
Deeply problematic. Another problematic which the national media has forgotten, the rest of the country, when the Indian armed forces go to Congo or Rwanda, you have this principle of separating the warring groups and create a buffer zone. That's perfectly okay. But when you do within the country, what is your purpose? Your purpose is to enforce the constitution, isn't it? The constitutional order. The one critical aspect of the constitutional order is to take care of the citizen. Indian constitution starts with Article 5. At the very beginning of our constitution, it is a citizen and their right. Fundamental rights begin in Article 12. So your job of enforcing constitutional order, that's the mandate of our security forces, Indian Army, Police, Central Security Forces, all of them. But what they are doing, instead of enforcing that constitution, which means allowing people to get access to airport, to highways, to their homes, they are separating. This can only come when your mindset, you take Manipur as not a part of India where constitution is not there, but a foreign countries where you're doing a peacekeeping mission. That's what the Indian security forces are doing for the last 3 years, and the rest of the country is not talking about it. And I'm saying this, communal violence is in the bone marrow of this country since 1920s onwards. And partition happened because of that. Post-partition, we have series of violence. Have you ever done for 3 years separating Hindus and Muslim? And Muslim area mein hospital hai, isliye Hindus cannot go. And airport is in Hindu areas, Muslim cannot go. Have you ever practiced that in the country? You wouldn't do it because you think these are all citizens, they should get access to this. It's a constitution. But in Manipur, you don't treat it as a part of the constitution framework. So you justify, which is an illegal, unconstitutional practice of buffer zone and separating. Last one. Who support this buffer zone? Some of the same cookie elites. I'm using not cookie as a community. They keep on justifying this buffer zone. And Indian state is cooperating. That is why, especially among the Meiteis and Nagas, they think that this is a proxy war of the Indian state fought through some of these cookie groups and elites.
Is it a frozen conflict or is it a forgotten conflict?
I would not say it's not forgotten. It's definitely not forgotten. This is something that I have said. I think this is, since I'm a student of social science, I have worked on this for a long, long time. I'll give you an example. In 2003, there was a national security meeting in Delhi. And there was a lovely picture. I will not name the paper, okay? I have written this. There's presented a paper in national seminar way back some 20 years ago. You will be surprised to see this, okay? I don't want to name the paper. National security. And there were 5 chief ministers in that picture. And the caption was beautiful, borrowed from Benetton, United Colors of India, of the Republic. And they mentioned CM of this, CM of this, CM. There were 4 CMs' names were mentioned. Sri Ibobi was in the frame. His name did not appear. A security concerned state ka CM, Ibobi, in that national media, and I used that picture and argued the question you're saying about forgotten, that's why I'm saying. It's not a question of out of sight and hence out of mind. It is out of mind, hence it is out of sight. आपका दिमाग में इसका कैटेगरी है ही नहीं, आपका राष्ट्र चेतना में आप कैसे देखोगे? गो टू कांट, इमैनुअल कांट फिलॉसफी. आपको कैटेगरी दिमाग में एग्जिस्ट नहीं है. यू डोंट हैव दैट कैटेगरी इन योर माइंड. इवन द फिजिकल प्रेजेंस इन द फ्रंट, यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू परसीव दैट. एंड इट्स नॉट फॉरगॉटन. It's a Rashtra Chetna. Manipur is burning. It is an unethical division of buffer zones, treating like this. Why is that happening? I said this in Parliament. जो British लोगों ने क्या किया था? India was considered as an anthropological subject, not a historical subject. And Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay said, we must have a history to make ourselves visible, because the European epistemology, knowledge, their discourses make us invisible. Though we exist, but they don't see us. You see, it's not a part of history. You are in anthropology. And India is doing in post-colonial period, and many scholars say there is a continuity between colonial and the post-colonial. Modi ji himself said it, that's why he changed BNAs and all this thing. Decolonization. The Rashtra Chetna needs to be decolonized all the more. Jab tak Northeast ko aap log decolonize kar paoge, this kind of problem will happen in Manipur. You will keep on not registering, despite this factual thing that I am saying. It's an insurgency paradigm, it's an ethos. You have been excluded from Indian history textbook. How your children will know? Then Manipur kya hai? Assam kya hai? Nagaland kya hai? How will you know? Understand that. So this is something that I'm telling you. You decolonization की बात करोगे आप. I think first and foremost things that you need to, all Indian scholars, all Indian think tank must look at notice. आप उसको पहले decolonize करो, then rest of India will take care of itself.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for making time for On Point, sir.
It's my pleasure, always.